This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Rabbi, I want to share with you a very important limud that we learned from Parshas Vayigash on the first two words of the Parsha, Vayigash Elav, right? So earlier today we gave a whole share on the word Vayigash. So now, Baruch Hashem, we're up to the second word, Elav. You know, we're slowly plowing through Parshas Vayigash. So, Vayigash Elav. And he approached him. What does that mean, Vayigash? He came close. Why did he need to come close? What was Yehuda trying to accomplish? So there's a wondrous comment of the HaChaim HaKadosh that Yehuda was employing a psychological ploy and a psychological technique to try to win over Yosef HaTzadik. And that is, let's ask ourselves the following question. You know, everybody wants to know, you see that guy over there, Ploini Almoini, from Yehovitzville, what does he think about me? Does he like me? What does he feel about me? What's his opinion of me? Am I on his good side? Meaning, can a person ever have a window into someone else's soul and know what they think about them? And the answer is absolutely. The rule is, Kamayim panim al panim, kain leiv b'nei adam el chaverai. The way water reflects someone else's face, the other person's heart reflects your heart. Meaning, you want to know what he thinks about you, you want to know what he feels about you, whatever you feel about him, he feels about you. You want to know, does he like me? If you like him, he likes you. And if you don't like him, he doesn't like you either. You know, it's basically the answer is the feeling is mutual. You don't really need a window into the other person's soul. People say, I want you to be transparent with me. You know, we need better communication. No, transparency, it's overrated. There's no such thing. You don't need transparency. You don't need communication. All you need to know is how you feel about them, that's how they feel about you. And therefore, you can manipulate somebody. You ready? Now we're learning the art of manipulation. You heard it here first. Don't tell anybody. You give away the secret, you're dead meat. Okay? We're now about to learn the art of manipulation. How do you manipulate somebody to like you?
Be nice to them.
The answer is if you engender in your heart warm, happy, good, caring feelings to them, even though you don't really mean it, then they will feel close to you. Now you have to be sincere. No, you have to be sincere about your insincere feelings, okay? You have to sincerely, manipulatively engender warm feelings in your heart, even though you don't really want to, and by doing so you could lure the other person into liking you. And that is exactly what Yehuda did to Yosef. And where do we see this? Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda came close to him. It doesn't just mean he stepped close to him. Says the HaChaim HaKadosh, Al derech amroi, kemayim hapanim lepanim, kain leiv ha'adam la'adam. Nischakim Yehuda, therefore. Lazet nischakim Yehuda. To turn the heart of Yosef to him, barachamim. He brought close his opinion and his ratzain to love him and to endear him, so that Yosef HaTzadik should come closer to him to accept his appeasement, which is some kind of a dichotomy here, because in Yehuda thought Yosef was a dictator, a tyrant, a brutal king, but yet a person has the human ability to engender a warm feeling to thereby manipulate the other person, and he needed to do this, says HaChaim HaKadosh, because minat teva, the Bnei Yaakov would not love somebody like Yosef, who they thought was an Oved Avodah Zarah. Really, they were naturally appalled and disgusted by what they thought Yosef represented. After all, Yosef's a Mitzri, like a Chamor, says HaChaim HaKadosh. Therefore, Lefi Shah, temporarily, he needed to change over his Teva, to bring himself close, and to draw him to the desires of his heart. So this is very good advice. Somebody has to take an interview by a disgusting, abhorrent boss. So you could sort of leave outside of the room your feelings of repulsion to this person, and you engender in your heart, you could have the ability to engender in your heart genuine feelings of warmth and niceness to them, and by doing so you could actually lure and manipulate the other person to like you, and win the job. Okay, so that's my first piece of advice, and I would like 10% commission if you do land. If you do land, what?
It's not true.
No, you could. Yehuda could do it. No, if the HaChaim HaKadosh says, we're going to see, this is just the first step. This is the first step. This is we're going to get much deeper. Okay? You could temporarily turn over a person's nature, meaning? Lefisha. It's not permanent. It's a temporary change a shift in your attitude toward them, to change over your nature and to draw the other person close. Okay, that's the first step. Second step. These are the comments of the HaChaim HaKadosh. It always bothered me, and somebody actually asked me this question this year in Parshas Miketz, in the first encounter with Yosef. What does the pasuk say? It says, as soon as Yosef saw them, he recognized them. Look what the pasuk says. Vayar Yosef esecha vayakireim vayisnakir aleihem vayidaber itam kashois. So it says vayakireim. He recognized them. Next pasuk. Vayakir Yosef esechav. Yosef recognized his brothers. V'hem lo hikaru, and they didn't recognize him. The obvious question here is, it says 2 times that Yosef recognized the brothers. Once it says Vayakireim in Parak Mem Beis, Pasuk Zayin, why does it have to say again in Parak Mem Beis, Pasuk Ches, Vayakar Yosef Esechav?
One could be physical, one could be emotional. He understood their real insides as opposed to their surface.
The first time he wasn't sure the first time. He recognized him, but he wasn't sure.
It says Vayakireim. So the HaChaim HaKadosh says like this. HaChaim HaKadosh says, and by the way, I'll tell you a little secret. This happens to me every Shabbos. Come on.
It's not a secret anymore.
Listen to this. No, I thought I could trust you, Right? So, HaChaim HaKadosh says, there is a human nature that you ever wonder, all of a sudden somebody pops into your head. And you wonder, why am I thinking about them? The answer is because that person's thinking about you. And the hearts are connected, and says HaChaim HaKadosh, human hearts have discussions with each other, even when they're not together in the same room and they're not present. The Lashon of HaChaim HaKadosh is, Halavavois yagidu soidois ne'elamim. The hearts speak hidden secrets. Like it says, Kemayim panim el panim, kain leiv ha'adam la'adam. When we say as water reflects the face, so does the heart hearts don't have to be together in the same room. I could be here, someone else could be in a different country, and we're talking and we're conversing. I'll tell you, this happens to me every Shabbos. I always wonder, I say, where is this guy? Why is this guy not in shul? And the next second he walks in. Maybe like 9, maybe not exactly on time. It always happens that I'm thinking about a guy, and then he just walks into shul. Why? Pshat is, the guy's running late, and he's thinking to himself, oh man, I have to come to shul, the rabbi's going to see me come late. That's the second that I think about the guy. I'm telling you, every Shabbos Keseder, 9:20, 9:25, 9:30, 9:35, one guy after the other.
I mean, if this happened 3 or 4 times, the guy's always arriving at 9:20, you're expecting to see him.
Yeah. No, yeah, but...
solution.
Yeah.
Don't think about the people coming late.
What?
Don't think about the people coming late.
I don't, but they think I'm thinking about them. They think I'm thinking about them.
They can put a thought in your mind.
That's the point. No, that's what we're saying. Yeah. The reason you think about someone is because they think about you. When they think about you, you automatically think about them. Yeah? So that's the Yesod of the HaChaim HaKadosh. So therefore, he reads the psukim like this. Now, he doesn't say what he's bothered by, but he's answering. The first time it says Yosef recognizes the brothers, and therefore he's plotting against them. And everything. The next pasuk is, even though Vayakar Yosef Esechav, Yosef recognizes his brothers, so he's thinking Ruvain, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar as well. But even so, V'hem lo hikaru, they still didn't recognize him. Even though Yosef thinking about them. And by that token, the thoughts of Yosef should be entering their minds. And it did. So at the moment that they're looking at Yosef, they're thinking about Yosef. Why are they thinking about Yosef? Because Yosef recognized them. it was so far in their minds that this guy could be Yosef that they didn't recognize him. That's how HaChaim HaKadosh learns that. Look at number 12. Vayakar Yosef, Perush, Hagam Shehu Hikiram, even though he recognized them, Litzad Shehinicha Mechasim Azakein, because they left with a beard, and Miteve and Noishi. And human nature is Kishatoilet Haydir Belev Echad Me'ashnayim, that when the thought and the knowledge in the heart of one is born from the second, Gam Belev Hashini Yisar Bechina Sazikaroin, meaning human nature is when A thinks about B, B thinks about A. Ki halevava isyagidu soidos nalamim, because the hearts speak secrets, like it says Kamayim Panim Labanim. Still, afal pikein moidia hakosef shehem lo hikiruhu. Why? Because there's no way they could cholam zach that this guy who's the king of Egypt was their brother. Marv Rabbi, this is an amazing concept. The fact that there's this human connection between people, and as we're going to see, certainly between Yidden, between Jews. Let's take it to the next level. And that is, let me ask you a question. Rashi says in Parshas Vayeshev that Yaakov Avinu could not be consoled. Why not? Who remembers? Why couldn't Yaakov be consoled? After all, after a year, you forget about the person. Because he's still alive. So after a dead person, you stop thinking about. But a living Yosef was alive. Rashi's lashon is, Ein adam mekabel tanchumin al achai. A person cannot accept consolation for a living person, v'savar shehumeis. Why? Because on a dead person, there's a decree that he should be forgotten. Why does Rashi say that the decree is on the dead person he should be forgotten? Rashi should say that Hashem makes a decree on the living person that he forgets the mess. Why is the decree on the mess that he should be forgotten? The decree should be on the living person that he stops thinking about the dead person. Another question is, what do you mean there's a gezerah that a person begins to be... What does it mean there's a gezerah that a person begins to forget about the mess? What do you mean it's a gezerah? Hashem doesn't meddle into a person's bechira. If Hashem lo yaleinu brought a gezerah min hashamayim, then it's up to the person to be makabel the gezerah bi'ava. Why is Hashem decreeing that the person should be forgotten? Why doesn't Hashem give a person free choice to choose to be makabel the gezerah barachamim ube'ava? Marv Rabbi say, listen to this. I have a question for you. How is it possible to tell a person, love Hashem? How do I love Hashem? I can't see Him, I can't feel Him, I can't know. How do you love something that you can't experience? So what does David HaMelech say? Sama nafshi leilokim lekel chai. My heart thirsts for God, the living God. Masai avai ve'ira pnei elokim. You know what this means? If there's a concept between people of kemayim panim al panim, kein lev b'nei adam al chaverai, then it applies between us and Hashem as well. Do you know why it is possible for a person to constantly love Hashem? Because how do you think the Rebbeinu Shalom is thinking and feeling about you right now? The Rebbeinu Shalom is a Kel Chai, He's a living God. If He's a living God, that means every moment of the day, His thoughts are on you. His ava is to you. His desire is for you. And therefore David HaMelech says, Sama nafshi leilokim, Rebbeinu Shalom, my soul thirsts for you. Why? Lekel Chai, because you're a living God. And you yearn for me, and you love me, and you're thinking about me. And Kemayim panim al panim, therefore my neshama feels your love, and feels the attention you're giving me, and responds in kind through the process of Kemayim panim al panim, kein lev b'nei ha'adam el chaverai. So I always like to say, it's very interesting. Where in davening is the mitzvah of the Ohavta is Hashem Elokecha? In Kriyashma, in the beginning, right after we say Haboicher b'Amo Yisrael b'Ava. How do you tell a Jew to love God? Very pashut. First we say Ribbon Hashem, you loved us. You love us. Mamela, it's only natural that we would respond in kind of Yohavta Is Hashem Lekecha through the process of Kamayim Panim Al Panim. So it goes like this. Why does a person forget about a mess? Why does it fade? You never forget completely. But why after a year does it fade? The answer is Hashem made a decree that after a year, the mess stops thinking about the chai. The memela person stops thinking about the mess. Because you can't tell a chai, stop thinking about that person. Well, if they're thinking about me, then I'm automatically going to think about them. So Hashem makes a decree, not on the chai. He makes a decree on the mess. Then after a year, the mess stops thinking about the chai. Memela, the chai doesn't think about the mess as much. But while the person is still alive, Yosef was constantly thinking about Yaakov. Therefore, Yaakov could not be consoled. But it's interesting. When even, I guess, to the different levels, it's interesting. Yehuda tells Yosef, the achiv meis, his brother died. How did Yehuda know his brother died? Because Yehuda really thought his brother died. Because once Yosef got out of jail, and Yosef named his son Menashe, Ki nashani Elokim, God made me forget. Once Yosef started to forget Yaakov, then Yaakov began slightly to be consoled. Mar v'Rabbi, what is this concept that the HaKadosh is telling us? Which obviously it applies to all of mankind, because the HaKadosh says Yehuda was able to manipulate Yosef, even though they didn't think Yosef was a Yid, but presumably this concept of Kamayim Panim Al Panim, Ken Leibnei Ha'adam El Chaveroi, applies to a greater level, to a Yid, to Klal Yisrael. Why is this true? How does this work? What's the mechanism of Halavavois Yagidu Soidois Ne'elamim, that the hearts speak secrets. I'm middle of writing the lashon together with the family for my grandmother's matzeva. So calling different family members to get some of the names. So I was told when my grandmother was in the Holocaust, she was running from one farm to the next, and she had no water to drink. And she, in some meadow somewhere, she saw a little puddle. She scooped it up, and she began to drink it. And she drinks it, and she retches. It was gasoline. Anyway, she meets her sister after the war, and they're talking. And the sister happened to tell her, by the way, I had this crazy thing, her sister tells her. One night, on this night, I woke up in the middle of the night with a taste of gasoline in my mouth. I didn't know what it was. I couldn't understand. Why did I have a taste of gasoline in my mouth? And it was the day that my grandmother drank gasoline, right? There's stories like this. What is this concept? What is the idea of Kamayim Panim Al Panim, Kein Lev Ha'adam L'Chaveroi? What's the meaning of it? So it's interesting. We'll finish up. Rashi says in this week's Parsha that the number of souls that came down to Mitzrayim, Shivim Nefesh. Why Shivim Nefesh? To teach Lefi Shahayu Oivdim L'Kel Echad, because they all worship one God. By Esav it says Sheish Nefashos. Even though there are only 6, they're called plural. But by Yaakov Avinu, even though there were 70, but since we worship one God, we're called one Nefesh. Interestingly, Rabbi, the Nefesh HaChaim explains this further, and that is, if you would ask somebody, where is the neshama located? Where is the soul located? So people would point here, their eyes, their brain, their mouth, their heart. So Nefesh HaChaim says that the body to the neshama is really like the shoe to the body. The body really only houses the bottom part of the neshama. And the neshama consists of many parts, naran, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Each one has 10 parts, the 10 spheros. And the top part of the nefesh clings to the bottom part of the ruach, and the top part of the ruach clings to the bottom part of the neshama. And what transpires is as follows, that every Jew has his nefesh, but if we were to have the proper glasses, we would see that what's in our body is only the bottom part of the nefesh, and it trickles up through all the oilamais, through the shiva rakia, and all the way on the top, the highest part of the neshama, which we say the neshama of a Jew comes from the olam ha'atzilus. It all connects to one giant neshama, the nishmasin, to the Rebbeinu Shalom himself. That at the core of our neshamas, all of Klal Yisrael is connected at the root. And there's a concept the Netziv writes about, Ki chelek Hashem amai, that if you want to know what Klal Yisrael is, we're like a wick. What does that mean, we're like a wick? That the bottom of the wick is unraveled into hundreds, thousands of little strands, but on the top of the wick, it's connected very tightly. And that is, downstairs in this world, every Jew is maybe a separate entity, but at its root core, there is one central source of all the neshamas, and that is Rebbeinu Shalom himself. And to a very great level then, every Jew is connected at the root. And therefore, there are subconscious experiences, and there is forms of communication that sometimes we're not even aware of. You know, it's almost, sometimes you say, hey, I had an intuition, or I had a feeling, or like the Gemara says, Afa pi shehu lo yira maz lo yira. Person could have some kind of intuition. That is because there is a very deep connection between every member of Klal Yisrael. And this is a very important limud of Parshas Vayigash. Let's just end off. The Beis Yosef writes in Siman Kuf Yud Beis in Hilchos Tefillah. The Beis Yosef says amazingly that the Shemona Esrei was formulated based on 19 different historical events. So, for example, the Beis Yosef writes in Siman Kuf Yud Beis that when Abraham Avinu was saved from Ur Kasdim, the Malachi Ashari said, Magen Avraham. When Yitzchak woke up from the Akedah, he said, Mechaye Hamesin. When Yaakov Avinu came to Yerushalayim and he was sanctified the name of Hashem, they said, Hakel HaKadosh. When Gavriel taught Yosef the 70 languages, they said, Choinen Hadoas. When Ruvain did the Maisa Bila and he was punished with Misan, he did Shuvah, he said, Haroitza b'shuva. After Yehuda did the Maisa Tamar, and he asked for forgiveness, they said, Baruch Atah Hashem, Chanun Hamar B'Laslayach. When Hashem told Klal Yisrael he was going to redeem them, they said, Goyal Yisrael. When Rafal healed Abraham, Roifei Chalam Yisrael. When Yitzchak planted and he found Mea Sha'arim, Mevarech Hashanim. And when Yaakov Avinu came down to Mitzrayim, and all the Shvatim gathered with Yosef, they said the bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, Mekabetz, Nidchei, Amai, Yisrael. I'll let you see further. But this is the limud of Parshas Vayigash. Vayigash teaches us the achdus of Klal Yisrael. Yosef, Yaakov, all the Shvatim in Mitzrayim were nesached to be Shivim Nafesh. And we learned the lesson that at the root core, all of Klal Yisrael is one entity. Their central neshama, which traces back to Nishmasa, the Nishmasin, the ultimate neshama, which is the Rebbeinu Shalom himself. And therefore, there is this concept of Vayakar Yosef es echa v'hem lahi kiruhu. That even though technically Yosef's heart was talking to his brothers, and the brothers were then thinking of Yosef, they still were not able to recognize him. Rabbi Sai, I wish you all Agun Shabbos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.